You didn't share these emotions with your mom? Why is that?
I would try to express myself and cry to her. If she'd be like, "Stop crying, there's nothing I can do about it." Most people didn't know that my dad had passed away. I didn't even start talking about that until I was in my 30s. I didn't want people to feel sorry for me.
Isabel, what do I have to know in the earliest context to be able to understand like who you are today?
Who I am today, that's a great question. Um, Let me think about that one for a second. What do you need to know? You need to know that this current version of me is in a space that I think is almost unstoppable. I think for many years, I doubted my worth and my value. And, I didn't think I was very smart. And I thought that I led with a very chaotic mind, suffering from things like depression and anxiety and ADHD. And then one day I just kind of woke up and I realized that if I was truly believing that life is what it is, then I have the power to change that within. And so I would say, one thing to just know off the bat is that I am living life to the fullest because I believe I can. I am doing the things that I'm doing, even though they're difficult, because I believe that I can. So I am a person who is leading with the utmost confidence and belief in myself that I maybe didn't have before.
You talk about ADHD, depression. Like, can we zoom in into that part of your
Yeah,
life? What
yeah,
happened?
absolutely. Well, we talked a little bit about this earlier. So, in a almost bizarre twist, right? Uh, my father passed away very unexpectedly when I was 12, and literally in an instant, just like that, he dropped right in front of my eyes and right in front of my brother's eyes and my mother's eyes. And a matter of fact, a whole park full of people. And ever since that day, it changed me. And for a long time, I sat in a depressive state because I didn't go get the help that I needed. I just kind of tried to bury that rather than sit with it and understand it and accept it and grieve and move forward. It was kind of this low level depression that I carried with me. And what would happen was that would give me anxiety. I become very anxious and nervous about the fact that just as soon as we have life, it can be gone just like that. I saw it happen. Um, and so I struggled for probably 30 years of the 41 years I've been alive with with this depression and this anxiety and not being able to sleep at night. Maybe only usually getting about 4 hours of sleep, leaning on things like melatonin to fall asleep, just because I was in this constant chaotic state. More than that, when I was younger, I had a skin disorder. So that made me different from other kids. In addition to being now the only kid who lost a parent, I'm also the only kid who has a skin disorder. And amidst that, uh, I have brothers. I have three brothers. I'm the oldest. Somebody needed to step in and help my mom take care of them, and that was me. And so rather than at 12 living a childhood and being a kid, I had to grow up very, very quickly. And so I think all of that kind of just played into my mind kind of always being in chaos, always worrying about other people and just trying to figure out what I was going to be able to do to make sure that we were all taken care of. And then as I got older, I carried that with me. And then I had children. And, I was afraid for, I think, even a long time to want to connect with my children because I was so afraid about the fact that I might die, to be honest. If my dad passed away at 39, I didn't think I was going to make it to 39. So, most people celebrate a big 40th birthday. I'm celebrating 39 like it was going to be my last big hurrah celebration because I was convinced I wasn't going to make it any further than that. So there's a lot that I managed through. And, like I said today, I'm a much different person having now really begun to unpack all of that and find the appreciation, if you will. And I know this might be difficult for some people to believe, but I am today who I am because of everything that's happened in my life. So even with my dad passing, even in the manner that it happened, I'm thankful because it taught me some of the most incredible lessons. I lead with an awful lot of empathy and heart for people. And to be honest, I don't know if that happens without him passing. So I look at it in a totally different way than I did 20 to 30 years ago.
Incredible. Like chaos. What do you mean by chaos? You mentioned it a lot of times.
Yeah. Chaos is, it's a kind of a fun word to me, but what it really means for me in the way that I like to describe it is, imagine a hamster in a hamster wheel that's just like
Right.
this all day
Right.
long. That's what's going on in my head. So it's like the minute I open my eyes, the hamster's back in the wheel. And there's a million different things floating around in my head, stuff about work, stuff about my kids, stuff about life in general, my relationships, past items, future items, things I can't control, things within my control. And all of this is just going on at once in my head. And so a very long time, I didn't even realize that wasn't normal. I thought everybody's head operated like that. And so when one day I was kind of explaining that to someone and they're like, "What are you talking about? Like how do you not sleep?" And I'm like, "I can't stop the thoughts. They just go all day long." And I'm like, "Don't they go all day long for you?" And they're like, "No." I'm like, "What do you hear? What do you hear in your head all day long?" And they're like, "Nothing." And it just blew my mind. I'm like, "How can you I can't get it to stop. How can you not be having these thoughts all day long?" And it wasn't until I tried this method that I found online of meditation in silence. And the descriptor that, you could do inner work and inner child work and things of that nature to kind of work on your past grief that you're carrying forward with you in life, but to really kind of silence the mind and be able to let thoughts come and go as if they're going down a river without reacting to them. Meditation, 25 minutes in the morning in silence, has really helped to quiet my mind. And once my mind got quiet, my level of focus is just off the charts. In my level of creativity is just off the charts because now I'm not operating in chaos. It's a lot more organized in here. The hamster has retired.
Improvement. Like you went through a journey of from a chaotic life into learning about the meditation and then truly learning about how to operate your mind. I like to dive back into the starting phase just to walk us through this journey of you from the start, like a super chaotic mind. How do you how was the life like when you interact in school, the people around you, and juggling with a big family with being the eldest one? Like what was life like at the earlier part of your child period?
Yeah. Yeah. So after my dad passed away, I would have to, I make this joke that most kids in the morning, when they wake up for school, their parents are getting them breakfast and they're sitting at a table together. And then they, head off to school at the regular time around 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
My morning started at about 4:30 in the morning. At 4:30 in the morning, my mom had a child after my dad passed away with someone else. And so at 15, I was helping her take care of a newborn. And so that meant she had to get up and leave for a job by 5 o'clock in the morning. I was getting up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning to get my brother ready for the day, get all three of my brothers plus myself ready to go to school. My mom was already gone. I'd have to walk my youngest brother, I'd have to carry him 2 blocks to the babysitters. And that's not that much, but I grew up in Chicago, Illinois, which is very, very cold in the winter. So imagine I'm like bundled up in this big jacket and I'm carrying a newborn child 2 blocks to the sitters that watch the child, my brother, for my mom. Then I was going to school. I was getting to school by third, fourth period. I was tired. Most kids were just getting their energy. I would nap sometimes in my classes, and my teachers would call me lazy and say that, I wasn't applying effort. But little did they know, after school, after I'd gotten up at 4:30 in the morning to get everyone ready and go to school, after school, my mom still wasn't home from work. So I'd have to watch my brothers, help them with their homework. If we needed to make food, get food ready. By the time my mom got home, she's tired from working all day. So now I'm taking care of my little brother and I'm getting my homework done and I'm also trying to live my life. And before I know it, it's 10, 11 o'clock and the cycle starts all over again. And that was school. And so the first few years of high school, I struggled. I struggled because I was just tired. I was doing probably way too much for my age. At some point in the mix of all that, I got a job to help my mom be able to like support the household or at least support myself so she didn't have to worry about me. So I was going to school, taking care of my brothers. I also had a job that I worked, 3 to 4 times a week, and it was a lot. I carried a lot on my shoulders and would try to focus at school, and oftentimes I couldn't. And so, like I said, teachers would call me lazy and I wouldn't get the best grades. And then at some point I realized I need to focus more at school and turn that around. If I was going to continue to be able to help them, the best way that I could do that was better my education and continue my education so that I could get a good job so that I could help them out.
Why do they call you lazy? What do you think make
Because
them
I
call you
slept in the class.
that?
But a lot of times, math was something that I just didn't have interest in, to be honest. And it's ironic because today I make very good money at a consulting firm working with numbers all day long. That's literally my
Right.
job, is to work with numbers. But when I was in school, I didn't have the interest. And to be honest, I think what another big difference is some teachers, in my eyes, are not meant to teach. And I think some teachers get into teaching for the wrong reason, and that can honestly make or break a student's interest in the class. Um, and so I had a couple of teachers like that I think, were very critical and mean to kids, not just to myself, but to other kids as well, that kind of was like a discouraging learning environment because rather than lifting people up, they were criticizing them. I had a gym teacher who would talk about me to the other girls in the gym class and be like, she's so lazy. I feel like she could do more. And this is a gym teacher telling my peers that I'm lazy, not realizing all the things I'm having to do back home and the chaos that I'm living in back home. So I think, part of that played into it as well, because when I got to college, I had straight A's. And even in math class that I had to take, I got a B. I got 2 A's, 2 B's the entire time I was in college. One was in math and the other was in science. And I was happy with those grades because I worked very, very hard for those grades. But a lot of that also came to the fact that I had amazing teachers who were very patient, who never called me names, who were very, very encouraging. And I think that makes a difference in education as well.
You mentioned about people not understanding like what you are going through at that particular phase of your life, and how does it transition to your college life? Like, because before that, like I believe there's a lot of things to prove, a lot of things that a lot of baggage that you're holding, like this sense of you wanting to prove them wrong. What was it because of that that actually helped you through getting into the college that I'm gonna work extra hard and whatnot? Like what was like the mentality like? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because honestly, as open as I am now about all of the things I went through when I was younger, I never shared that. I never shared any of that with people. So I think sometimes even when people hear me talk today, they're like, "What? What happened?" Like they can't believe it because I was just so used to carrying everything on my shoulders. And I think from a very young age, it is no knock to my mom whatsoever. But the times that I would try to express myself and cry to her, if you will, about stuff, she'd be like, "Stop crying. There's nothing I can do about it." Like, there's nothing I can do. I can't fix it for you. There's nothing I can do about it. So stop crying. And I carried that forward. So most people didn't know that my dad had passed away. I didn't even start talking about that until I was in my 30s. And then even then I kind of struggled. The skin disorder that I had never talked about that. I always tried to do my best to hide that. I just didn't feel comfortable talking about it. I didn't want people to feel sorry for me, I think was a huge part of it. Even with my dad passing, I didn't tell people because I never wanted anyone to feel sorry for me. I wanted to do things and maybe to your point, prove and show them wrong, right? I think when my dad passed away, there was kind of this stigma going around about, well, how what happens when people grow up in single parent households and poor girl and she's probably not going to amount to much of anything in life now because she doesn't have a full support system at home. And so I do absolutely think there was this part of me always within me that was, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to do it and I'm going to do it differently and I'm going to show you that it can be done. And then allow people to use me as that example. That one of the things I love to say about myself now is I am a living example of someone who knows to get it out the mud. I know how to get it out the mud every single time, regardless of what the obstacle is, because for me, I've already lived my worst day. My worst day was the day that my dad passed away. For me, it can't get any worse than that. Or if it can, I don't want to know. But up until this point, there's been nothing that's been worse than that, and if I have survived that day, I can survive every other day going forward.
Will you consider that day to be one of the hardest day for you
The
of
worst day of my
throughout your
life.
life?
And you know what? It's interesting, I think these days, I had this revelation when I was in Las Vegas, of all places, and I'm sitting by this beautiful pool in this beautiful hotel at the Wynn in Las Vegas. And I had this revelation that that day in particular was the best and worst day of my life. The best because eventually, like I said, it's taught me so many invaluable lessons. I like to say mentally, you know, I'm like an 80-year-old woman in like a 25-year-old body and like a, 30 something attitude, like a kid and even sometimes like a kid level attitude. I'm kind of a blend of different things. And that level of wisdom that I do believe that I carry is because of that day. So again, like for me, I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful for that day because of all the ways that my dad could have gone. That day, we had the best morning breakfast family together. My dad and I did a 20-mile bike-a-thon for a kid in the neighborhood that had multiple sclerosis that we were helping to raise money for. We were on our way to a father-daughter softball game, and that's when he passed away. So there's so many great things leading up to that moment. And, it hurts my heart that we didn't make it to that father-daughter softball game. But at the end of the day, I will take 12 short years with my dad over 1 minute of a dad who is an absent dad or not supportive or abusive. I'll take those 12 short years and embrace every ounce of it and be so thankful for it. And so I think that was something in a mindset shift that I didn't necessarily have before was the thankfulness to have spent, if it was going to be the last day, that we spent it doing great things.
Happy, grateful. It's something that I'm sensing from you right now, talking about the 12 years with your dad. Like, what make you have those feelings?
My dad was an amazing dad. He was So I was the only girl. I had brothers. I'm the oldest. I'm the only girl. I was very much, like my dad's best friend. I'm, to be honest, very much a tomboy in a sense. He used to take me to wrestling events when I was younger. I played softball. He used to take us bowling and just do all sorts of activities with us. Always listen to the kind of music that I like to listen to. My mom always liked to listen to older music, although I have appreciation for both now. And I think one of the other things that I just absolutely love is my dad was like that with everyone. I hear stories to this day about him that my cousin shares one who did have a dad, but the dad was abusive. And I mean, with near tears in his eyes, he's telling me, like, man, I think about your dad all the time. And it's a surprise to me because I don't know their relationship. It's so long ago. And I'm like, well, why do you say that? And he's like, well, I say it because your dad used to come pick me up and take us to go play basketball. It was your dad that showed me how to drive. It was your dad that did this for me. And it's not just that one cousin, it's so many lives that he positively impacted. And so I think large in part, kind of to what we were talking about earlier, is just this level of impact, positive impact that I would like to have for people. Because when he passed away, all sorts of people showed up. People I had never met in my life, and they all had stories like that. And I just think it's so amazing and something that I really strive to live by and for is this idea is like, I would like to have positive impact on as many people as possible before I leave this earth.
Incredible. Zooming back into that day, if I was like because that day is huge for you of his
Hmm.
passing. If I was a fly in the wall, what would I have seen?
Oh, you know, so much, so much joy, so much sadness. And I think the other thing that you would see that I haven't necessarily shared yet, but I've thought about as well recently is the way that in that moment people came together. Because as I said, we're in the middle of a park. There's tons of people around, families are there. You know, immediately when he fell to the ground, other parents ran to help. This is before cell phones. Someone ran across the street to a neighbor's house to get them to call an ambulance. The ambulance happened to be in the area for a kid who had broke his leg, and so they got there quickly. One of my dear and oldest friends' mother had to come pick us up, me and my brothers, because my mom went with the ambulance. And they just sat and had so much sympathy and empathy, and they cried with me and they held me. And so I'm so thankful for the people that we have in our life. Like, you would see a sense of community coming together. My When my mom came to eventually let us know that he had passed, all of her brothers and sisters that lived in the area were there with us. My grandmothers were there with us. And so, there's almost this part where it's unfortunate, but at the same time, like, brings people together. And beyond that, the community that I lived in did, fundraisers, which at the time, to be honest, I felt embarrassed because I'm like, we don't need anybody's help. We don't, but now that I'm older, if somebody threw a penny in that bucket, I'm so thankful for it because they didn't have to do that. And so I think you would just see kind of that sense of community in what I loved in my trip to Argentina was just people coming and being together and just being human towards one another. That's what you would see. You would see a lot of humanity that day in a bunch of different ways.
Beautiful. And I think it requires a lot of like living in the moment to be able to know about all these experiences, to be able to witness all this. It just takes a lot of observation, a lot of awareness. So I really like that. Coming to the point where you, after that day, a lot of baggages, like chip on your shoulders, struggles, and everything. Can we talk more about that? Like, what sort of things that you were carrying around with you? Uh, like because of after the passing of your dad, like what was the thing that actually got you so hard to be able to share with other people besides just um, thinking about, oh, I don't want you to feel sorry for me? Was there a bit of like shame that is involved during that phase of your life, that, oh, you are single family and whatnot? Because that is something that I've been thinking a lot about. Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I do honestly believe I carried a lot of shame about it. I, I think the other things that I have to take into consideration to that is that I'm Hispanic American. I'm a very proud Mexican American background. We grew up in an all Caucasian community. So we already stand out, if not for anything else, for the color of our skin. And then to add to that, I had this skin disorder, which at some point became debilitating in a sense. And so I had that, and that was just another thing. And then when my dad passed, and now we were the single Hispanic family on the block, it was just like, excuse me, there was an element of shame. There was also an element of anger. Uh, a lot of, for a very, very long time, why me? Why us? Why that way? Uh, and so I think, there's anger, there's shame, there's sadness. And now there's sadness that I don't, to the point of my mom earlier, if nobody can do anything about it, then why are you sharing it? Don't put that burden on other people, was kind of her mentality. And I think she's grown out of that as well. But at the time, that was kind of the thing. We really, even amongst my brothers, we really didn't talk too much about it. And so there's all these different emotions, these uncontrolled, unresolved emotions there's fear, there's anxiety, and it's just sitting there on your shoulders. And what I came to realize as I got older was that anger, that fear, that anxiety was showing up in all sorts of different ways. And so maybe my kids, spill something or do something, and I've just got this added extra anger, or they do something where I feel embarrassed. And now I've got this added extra anger because it's evoking emotions in me that I'm trying to bury. And so that's what I had to step back and realize is one way or another, no matter how deep and hard you try to bury something, it's going to show up. I think very interestingly, when I was walking around my last time in Las Vegas, kind of in this awakened sense, if you will, working on myself and being on this self journey, I stepped back and I noticed so many people are running, and some people are running very, very hard from something. There's a whole lot of us in this world just running. And if we just kind of sat for a moment, and it's very uncomfortable and it's not pleasant and it can hurt a whole hell of a lot. But if we sit and begin to work through that stuff, you come to find you really don't need to run at all. And then that's when you can stop and really, I believe, begin to wake up and enjoy life, is when you're not in this state of running from something, and rather now you're running to things.
Suppression, burying of things. Like, what do you think make you do that?
I largely was just kind of that's how my mom dealt or didn't deal with her stuff. And that's how I didn't deal with mine. It was kind of a generational thing that I think gets passed down. And I think there's a couple of movies that come to mind where it's this idea of, being the one in the family to kind of break those generational curse and speak up and speak out and do things differently than what our parents did. And that's what I had to do for myself, because my mom, to be honest, to this day, still carries so much of that on her shoulders. And there's so much that she's just not willing to work through. And the way that I like to look at all of that, that really kind of helped me put into perspective, is this idea that I don't know if it's true or not, but they say in ancient Egypt, if you killed someone, your punishment was to carry that dead body on your back until it eventually killed you. And there was a part of me, as part of waking up, that was like, if I keep carrying this dead body on my back, this hurt, this anger, this fear, this anxiety, it's going to kill me. It's going to, weaken my mind. It's going to weaken my body. It's going to exhaust me. There's all sorts of medical problems that are induced by stress. I don't want to live that way. And so I had to make a conscious effort to change that and try to do something about it.
You must take a lot of awareness to be able to discover that such things are happening for yourself, for your mom. Like, are you still suffering from this sort of suppression, burying of things? When things come to you, you want to like bury it away. Like, how are you dealing with it right now?
Yeah, no. I get everything out as much as I possibly can. Uh, because it feels like I said, I'm able to operate with a much more clearer mind if I just hit things head on. And so, as funny as it sounds, at work, I had a colleague who I thought did something that didn't make me feel very good. She had basically criticized me in front of coworkers who I felt didn't know me, and I didn't think that was fair. And rather than to continue to sit with that And so every time she would reach out to me, I would get angry and I'd be like, oh, what does she want? I hit it head on and I said, hey, can I talk to you? Here's the thing. I really don't like when you do that. If you, I can take feedback, but I would prefer that you reach out to me directly and give me that feedback rather than sharing that feedback in front of other people. And she's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea you felt that way. I apologize. For me, I'm not carrying anything on my shoulders anymore. The only thing these shoulders are going to carry are weights in the gym. Other than that, no more. I think I sleep very, very well at night. So remember way back at the beginning, I said I was getting maybe 4 hours of sleep and I would have to take something to help me fall asleep. I have 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. I close my eyes and I go to bed and I'm out, you know, 6 to 8 hours easy. And that's because I believe I'm not carrying the type of stuff that I was on my shoulders. I'm not no longer afraid to speak out and speak up and just try to bury and suppress things because it's like lesson learned. Lesson learned. There's no sense in trying to burying it because it's just going to come back up one way or another.
Improvement, like the changes of you transitioning from such a bad state into such a good state right now, like what are the steps that you have taken that allowed you to become like the person that you are today?
So I'll tell you this, up until about 8 months ago, and this is absolutely true.
Right.
8 months ago, I didn't even have social media. I hadn't had social media for 15 years. I just got back on social media 8 months ago after I went through a breakup. And, I went and I started to go to therapy. And I was like, I don't know why I keep attracting all of these people that are not good for me. And she's like, it's you. And I was very offended at first. And I'm like, no, it's not me. And I'm never coming back here. And then I got back home and I thought about it and realized that she was right. I had this pattern, and what I actually was codependent on people. And so I read this book called Codependent No More by Melody Beatty. Phenomenal book. And I just think really opened my eyes to a lot of the chaos and the things and the ways that I was living. And from there, I led with that curiosity we talked about earlier, where I'm like, okay, I think I have a self worth issue. I think I've got, you know, a caretaker issue. I think I've got dependency issues. And so it's like, where do I start? Where do I even start? Because in the book there's like list and list and list of different things that people can be, and they ask you to rank it, 0, 1, or 2, 2 being the highest, and I've got like all twos in every category. And I'm like, well, if I'm gonna change, I gotta start somewhere. And so I started with what I thought was the worst category for me, which was self-worth. And so working with my therapist, but also doing a lot of my research on my own and kind of just checking out Instagram, believe it or not, I found a couple of great resources on there that were talking about strengthening the mind, the idea of self-worth. There's a video that I watched where the guy was, the question was, how do I increase my self-worth? And the guy's response was like, just by asking. That's a start. That's a huge start. You're only going to be as worthy as you believe you are. And it's kind of like rewatching those videos and some of the things that they talked about, pairing that with inner child work, to go back to that 12-year-old version of myself and forgive myself, and imagine me giving my own self a hug and telling me all the things that maybe I wanted to hear in those moments that I didn't hear, began this major healing journey. And then I learned about the meditation in silence. And at first Remember, I said my mind is like a hamster in a wheel. There's no way I'm going to be able to close my eyes for 2 minutes and just try to sit. But I kept at it. And within like 4 to 5 days, I'll never forget this moment. I was able to meditate and kind of just let everything that was going in my head pass. And you said this word earlier, observe. So it was this idea of doing nothing more than observing and not judging it, not reacting to it, because I think problems need energy to live. And so it was like working with these mindsets. And I'll never forget, I walked into my kitchen and then I just stopped right as I got to the stove. And for the first time ever, I realized that my mind was silent. And I was like, no one else was here. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, my mind is silent. I don't hear anything. And then it started back up again. But that little bit of silence showed me it was possible. And then I just kept up with the meditation, kept up with the learning, kept up with the therapy. If she suggested doing, if you need to cry in your closet, deal with those emotions, write letters never to be sent to people. I did that for an awful lot of people, where it's working on an exercise of forgiving for yourself, forgiving you and forgiving that individual, and moving on and accepting oftentimes people are only capable of doing what they know. And so it's this mix of things that I've been doing for the past 8 months that has absolutely changed the trajectory of my life, particularly where it was for the past 30 years. 8 months, less than that, I would say. And every day's not perfect, every day's not a 10, if you will, but every day above ground is still a great day. And that's what I lead with. That's what I try to lead with every day.
Ego. Um, Back when the day when you actually seek help for the therapy and whatnot, like what got you through? What pushed you through to actually, say that, yo, I actually really need help, and that, yo, you're telling me that I'm suffering from this and that. Like, what is the thing that actually got you to actually, you know, first when to seek help, and then second of all, going through the whole process of this whole discovery kind of thing, 30 years, like you've been suffering from this, and then at this particular point, was it because that, you know, you're so tired and you're so miserable of all these sufferings that you don't think that you had enough? Like, what is the thing that actually got you at that point of time to actually say, I need help?
So it's not funny, but I'll say it's funny, is that I went to therapy, and this was not my first time. I've tried therapy in the past before, but every time I've gone to therapy, it's because I want the therapist to tell me the tools to fix someone else. And so when I went to therapy 8 months ago, it was like I was kind of at a point where I was like, you know what? I really like this guy, but he's got some skeletons, some major skeletons in his closet that he's dealing with. How do I best be the person for him? That's the true and honest reason that I went to therapy. And as I got to talking about her, I'm kind of talking about his problems and how do I best position myself to help him. And it was within that I realized, number one, you can't change someone else. That person has to make a conscious decision to change them. But number two, even if I wanted to be in the best position to help someone, I got to start with myself. I got to be in the best position myself to be able to help others. And that was the eye opener for me. So, to be very honest, I went to try to fix someone else and wound up working on trying to fix myself, if you will.
Incredible. Isabel, like, Why is like the things that we have missed so far during this whole conversation? What is like the hottest take thing that is been in your mind these days at this phase of your life that you are thinking about that you want to share?
I'm just excited. I think that, as I mentioned earlier, my level of self-worth and my level of confidence is at an all-time high. And I believe in myself more than I've ever believed in myself. And, you know, things keep happening, great things, unexpected things. And the only thing that I can attribute that to, I'll say this, there was for a very long time this quote that I've sat with and I've thought about many different ways. And now that I think about it in a different way, I'm even more excited about it. And it is, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Have you ever heard that?
No, but I get what you mean. Being ready.
And so for that quote, for the longest, I would say, oh, because I'm ready to lose weight, here comes the kickboxing instructor or the weightlifting instructor that I was looking for. Oh, because I'm ready to do this at work, here comes someone to teach me how to do that. And I had this moment, this aha moment, if you will, the other day where I wrote that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I get chills just thinking about it now because I realize in that moment for me, with all of this journey and everything that I'm doing, I am now, in essence, the student and the teacher. Like there's this future version of me that reaches inside and is teaching me and showing me all these wonderful and phenomenal things about myself. And it's just so fulfilling and so exciting that I want to share that with the world. I want to have, again, that positive impact on people. And I want everyone to have this level of happiness and excitement that I have, because it's amazing. It's amazing. I know what's on the other side, right? On the side of happiness is sadness, and I've seen the polar end of sadness for me, and now I'm ready to explore the happy side and truly, truly feel that way, because I think a lot of people say they're happy and they smile, but it's a bit of a mask that a lot of us wear. I'm genuinely that happy. Very, very happy. And I hope to just continue to keep being able to share that with the world.
Typically, people feel that they are being fake with their happiness. Like, why do you think they do that?
I think people don't necessarily know what happiness is. We tend to think, but at least in America for sure, uh,
Right.
we anchor our happiness to people, places, and things. Meaning, we think if we have the best job, we'll be happy. If we have the best husband and wife, or husband or wife, we'll be happy. If we have the nicest car, the fanciest clothes, we'll be happy. And I think we miss the mark that we are inherently happy as is. We are worth, and again, going back to the idea of self worth, I, my self worth is I'm worth it now. I'm worth it 10 years ago. I'm worth it when I was 1, 5. If I was 100 pounds, 500 pounds, I'm still worth it. And I think that's the piece, that's a huge piece that people are missing. Rather than just knowing within and anchoring their self worth to themselves, we try to attach it to other things. And so when we lose those things, then we begin to feel worthless, or we can't be happy, or life isn't complete. Life is complete as is. The minute we wake up, life is complete. And I think if we begin to lead with that type of mindset, rather than thinking, I'll be happy when I get this car or this job or the dream relationship, and just be happy now, you'd see a lot more genuine happiness.
Well articulated, very strong with your words, and I think that it requires a lot of emotional experiences and journaling and be in your mind to be able to talk about this whole journey from your start to the end. And I think it takes a lot of self-reflection for yourself to be able to talk about these things on this 1 hour podcast. And I really like that about you. Very well versed, very well articulated, and mission driven. I see a lot of like things that have actually happened to you. And I believe that during these setbacks, it's really hard to actually come back up strong into a stronger version, a better version of yourself. And that's why I see in you throughout this whole entire conversation, and people being living in the moment, that you really want to be living in the moment to actually experience life together with the community and being able to serve for others. That's why you mentioned about the last point that you actually want to make, which is making sure that people are genuinely happy. I'm really glad that you're on this journey, and because these vibes, I believe, will actually help people uh, all over the world. So yeah, really happy that you are doing this whole thing. And so we have a closing tradition for this podcast, right? So I'm gonna ask you this question: how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I will just tell you this. I am so incredibly thankful that you and I crossed paths. I think that you are doing an amazing job. I think you ask incredibly insightful questions. I can tell you are an amazing active listener and that you have a real passion behind what you do. And I'm so thankful today. I really genuinely am. Was so excited to come on and be able to talk to you. And then just even more excited now to see how much passion and thoughtfulness that you lead with. Life is good. I'm very thankful.
Thank you, Isabel. Um, but I like to learn more, like because at different phases of our life, this is from what I see, that on at different phases of our life, we'll feel happy, sad, and whatnot. And we got to learn that during these 8 months, incredible journey, incredible journey for you right now. But what will you say, like right now at this phase of your life? How are you doing? Like, how are you feeling at this
No,
current phase?
I really am feeling good. I really am feeling great. I've got a lot of opportunity on the horizon for me at work. I've got my podcast, which I find incredibly fulfilling because I film with one of my brothers. The level of bond that I think that has helped strengthen between him and I is just a gift. It's a real gift. I've got three amazing children. My mother, she is not in the best health, but she's here with us. At the end of the day, I have no complaints. I'm incredibly fortunate in life, incredibly fortunate. And you're right, not every day is going to be a 10. There are some days that I wake up and I'm grumpy and I don't want to go to work and I don't want to exercise and I don't want to eat right and I don't want to do these different things. But to your point earlier, I get up and do them. But at this point in my life, I am feeling the most fulfilled that I think I have ever felt in my life. and it's a good feeling. It's a great feeling.
Gratefulness. That's what I see about you um, looking at life. But what and how does like a happy life look to you?
A happy life to me is honestly is just life. I think that we take the simplest things for granted. That very first breath that I take in the morning, I'm conscious of it every single morning. Every single morning since my dad passed away. If I breathe and you inhale and your eyes open and you're up, I'm like, "Holy shit, like I get to live another day." Um I tried to I just tried to lead with that and be in that mindset as much as possible. Even knowing that the worst days I've lived I've already lived through some of my worst days. You know, so I know any type of challenges or things that come along the way, I now have the wisdom and the strength and the mindset to push through and help other people to push through. And it's just something I'm really grateful for and thankful for.
If there was like a happiest day of your life, how does it look like?
The happiest day of my life. I have some of the happiest days of my life. I have some of the happiest days of my life. I call them do nothing days. So, in a life of constantly taking care of people, even till this day, right? Taking care of my kids. This whole entire interview, I have a lap dog that's been sitting here the whole time. Uh, I'm always taking care of people or things. And so, some of my happiest days, to be honest, nothing days. And what do you do on do nothing days? Nothing. I sit in my bed. I love this movie. I don't watch movies or TV in general. There is one movie lately that if I feel like putting something on, I'll watch, and it's called Encanto. Are you familiar with that movie?
No,
You have to try to see it. It's an
really.
incredible movie. It's an animated cartoon movie, brilliantly done in terms of, I think, also lending to this idea of thankfulness and kind of sometimes the foundation has to totally, you know, everything has to fall to the ground for you to build back up again. And sometimes that's needed in life. And that's the story kind of behind Encanto. So a do nothing day to me, where I just sit in bed and I watch that movie and I play some music, and my kids will come and sit on the edge and talk to me, and I'll order uh DoorDash, like delivery food of whatever it is I want to eat, morning, noon, and night. I'll get it 3 times a day. And if I could have them, Jack, bring it all the way to my bedroom, I would pay extra money, but they only bring it to my front door because otherwise I don't want to get out of that bed for the entire day. Those are some of my happiest days because I am not doing anything. I don't have a care in the world. I'm just laying there and like decompressing. That's a super happy day for me.
Thank you, Isabel.